What if I told you that you're not who you think you are? What if everything you learned about human evolution was wrong? What if the blood running through your veins right now contains a secret so shocking that scientists hid it for decades? Take a deep breath. Feel your chest expand. That ability to process oxygen efficiently? You inherited it from a species that supposedly went extinct 40,000 years ago. Look at your skin. The genes that determine its color, its reaction to sunlight, its ability to produce vitamin D in cloudy climates. Not entirely human, at least not the kind of human you think you are. 50,000 years ago, in a cave lit only by flickering flames, two pairs of eyes met across the species divide. One pair belonged to what we call Homo sapiens, the other, Neanderthal. What happened next would change the course of human history, because those eyes didn't just meet in curiosity or conflict, they met in love. But this isn't a love story, it's a murder mystery, it's a war saga spanning 100,000 years. It's a tale of extinction and survival, of genius and brutality, of how we became the only humans left on a planet that once hosted at least 6 human species. Tonight, you're going to discover that you are not purely Homo sapiens. You're something more complex, more interesting, and more troubling. You're going to meet your ancestors, including the ones with the heavy brows, the massive muscles, and the genes that still influence whether you're a morning person or night owl. Scientists just cracked the code. December 2024. The results are in, and they change everything. We didn't replace the Neanderthals. We absorbed them. We didn't outcompete them. We outlasted them. Barely. We didn't prove our superiority. We proved that survival sometimes means becoming your enemy. If you have European ancestry, you're 2% Neanderthal. Asian, up to 4%. Think you're exempt because your ancestors never left Africa? Think again. You still carry their DNA through ancient back migrations. There's no pure human alive today, not one. We are all hybrids. We are all the children of that forbidden love in the firelight. And once you know the truth, once you see how deep this rabbit hole goes, you'll never look at yourself, your family, or your species the same way again. So buckle up, because you're about to discover why every racist on Earth is actually arguing against their own genes, why every human achievement includes Neanderthal contributions, why the story of us versus them is really the story of us becoming them. Welcome to When Neanderthals Met Humans, Clash of the Cousins. Welcome to the truth about yourself. The question isn't whether you're part Neanderthal. You are. The question is, are you ready to meet your real ancestors? Let's find out. The skeleton lay twisted in the cave floor, a stone spear point buried deep between his ribs. For 50,000 years, this Neanderthal man kept a secret that would shatter everything we thought we knew about human evolution. His name is Shanidar III, and he may be history's first murder victim. Picture this: Iraqi Kurdistan, 1960. Archaeologist Ralph Solecki brushes away millennia of dust in Shanidar Cave. What he uncovers isn't just another fossil, it's a crime scene frozen in time. The victim, a 40-year-old Neanderthal male. The weapon, a lightweight throwing spear, the signature technology of only one species, Homo sapiens. United States. But here's where it gets truly chilling. The wound shows signs of healing. This Neanderthal didn't die instantly. He survived for weeks, maybe months, with that spear point lodged in his chest, slowly dying from infection as his lung collapsed. Someone or something wanted him to suffer. Dr. Stephen Churchill from Duke University became obsessed with solving this prehistoric cold case. Using pig carcasses and replica weapons, he tested every possible scenario. The results sent shockwaves through the scientific community. the angle of entry, the clean puncture, the lack of shattering. Everything pointed to one conclusion. This wasn't a hunting accident. This wasn't Neanderthal on Neanderthal violence. This was deliberate. This was personal. And this was us. For the first time, we had forensic evidence of what might be humanity's original sin, the systematic killing of our evolutionary cousins. But Shanidar 3 was just the beginning. Across Europe and Asia, more evidence emerged. Skulls with suspicious fractures, bones with cut marks suggesting cannibalism, mass graves where Neanderthal remains showed signs of violence. The comfortable story we told ourselves, that Neanderthals simply couldn't compete with our superior intelligence, was crumbling. The truth was far darker. We didn't outthink them. We might have murdered them. But wait, if we killed them, why do you carry their DNA in our cells today? How can you wage war against a species while simultaneously falling in love with them? The answer to that paradox would revolutionize our understanding of human nature itself. Because Shanidar 3 wasn't just a murder victim, he was a messenger from the past, warning us about the darkness in our own hearts. And his story, it's really our story, the story of how modern humans became the only humans left on Earth. Tonight, we're going to solve a murder mystery 50,000 years in the making. We're going to meet our cousins, our competitors, our lovers. We're going to discover why every single person watching this, yes, you, is part Neanderthal. This is the story of when Neanderthals met humans, when cousins clashed, when love and war collided in the caves of prehistory. And trust me, by the end of this journey, you'll never look at yourself in the mirror the same way again. Imagine the moment. A misty morning, 200,000 years ago, a group of strange beings emerges from the African savanna, moving north into unfamiliar territory. Tall, slender, with high foreheads and sharp chins, they carry lightweight spears and move with an unsettling confidence. These are the first modern humans to leave Africa. Now picture who's watching them from the shadows. Stockier figures with massive brow ridges and barrel chests, muscles rippling under pale skin. They've ruled Europe and Asia for 300,000 years. They are the Neanderthals, and they're about to meet their destiny. This wasn't supposed to happen. For hundreds of thousands of years, two separate human species evolved on different continents. Neanderthals adapted to Ice Age Europe, developing sturdy bodies, large noses to warm frigid air, and pale skin to absorb scarce sunlight. Meanwhile, in Africa, our ancestors evolved differently. Gracile bodies built for running, dark skin for tropical sun, and something else. Something that would change everything. We developed what scientists call cognitive fluidity, the ability to combine different types of thinking in new ways. Where Neanderthals made the same tools for 200,000 years, we constantly innovated. Where they lived in small family groups, we built vast social networks. Where they stayed in one territory, we had an insatiable urge to explore. But here's what nobody expected. When these two human species first met, Neanderthals had every advantage. They knew the terrain. They'd survived ice ages that would have killed us. Their bodies were stronger. Fossil evidence shows they were pound for pound more muscular than modern bodybuilders. A Neanderthal handshake could crush your fingers. So what happened in that first encounter? The archaeological record gives us tantalizing clues. At sites across the Middle East, we find something remarkable. Layers of Neanderthal tools, then modern human tools, then Neanderthal again. Back and forth, back and forth. For 100,000 years. This wasn't the quick conquest we once imagined. This was a stalemate. Dr. Chris Stringer from London's Natural History Museum puts it bluntly. Early modern humans didn't sweep into Europe and wipe out the Neanderthals. They tried to colonize. They failed. They retreated. They tried again. They failed again. The evidence is everywhere. At Kafsa Cave in Israel, modern humans lived 100,000 years ago, then vanished. Neanderthals moved back in. At Skull Cave, the same pattern. Modern human advancement, Neanderthal return. It's like watching a 100,000-year game of territorial chess. But something else was happening during these encounters. Something that would leave permanent marks on both species. In those contested borderlands, in those moments when territories overlapped, when two types of humans met face to face. Something unexpected occurred. They didn't always fight. Sometimes, in the firelight of shared caves, with the Ice Age winds howling outside, two pairs of eyes would meet across the species divide. And in those moments, the future of humanity would change forever. Because we were about to discover that Neanderthals weren't the brutes we imagined, and they were about to discover that we weren't the weaklings we appeared to be. The collision of two human worlds had begun, and neither species would ever be the same. Forget every war you've ever heard of. The 100 Years' War, Child's Play, World War II, a blip. The longest conflict in human history lasted 1,000 centuries, and the combatants weren't nations or ideologies. They were two species of human, locked in a struggle that would determine the future of our planet. The evidence is written in bone and stone across 3 continents. Skull fractures, parry wounds on forearms, defensive injuries from blocking blows, embedded spear points, mass graves. This wasn't occasional skirmishing. This was systematic warfare on a timescale that defies comprehension. Dr. Nicholas Longrich from Bath University doesn't mince words. The archaeological evidence paints a dark picture. Both species show trauma patterns consistent with interspecies violence. Young males especially, the warriors, show injury rates that would make a Vietnam field hospital look peaceful. But this war was unlike anything in recorded history. No generals, no battle plans, no peace treaties, just generation after generation of territorial conflict playing out in slow motion across millennia. The front lines shifted with glacial patience. During warm periods, modern humans pushed north from Africa and the Middle East. During ice ages, Neanderthals pushed back, their cold-adapted bodies giving them the advantage. Back and forth, like the world's slowest tennis match, with extinction as the prize. Here's what made this war so strange. Both sides kept stealing each other's weapons. At Howison's port in South Africa, 65,000 years ago, modern humans suddenly start making tools using Neanderthal techniques. In Europe, Neanderthals begin crafting jewelry and art, behaviors associated with modern humans. It's like Yankees and Confederates swapping uniforms mid-battle. The geography tells the story. Neanderthals held defensive positions in cave systems across Europe, Vindija in Croatia, Mesmaiskaya in the Caucasus, El Cedron in Spain. These weren't random homes. They were fortresses, controlling river valleys and migration routes. Modern humans, meanwhile, favored open-air camps, maintaining mobility and communication networks. But the real shock came from genetic evidence. In 2010, scientists discovered something that rewrote the entire narrative. We carry Neanderthal DNA. The enemies were also lovers. The war zones were also meeting places. Every battle line was also a potential romance. This created a paradox that haunts us still. How do you wage genocidal war against a species while simultaneously creating children with them? How do you demonize an enemy whose genes you carry? The answer might lie in what anthropologists call competitive exclusion. Two similar species can't occupy the same ecological niche indefinitely. Like lions and tigers, wolves and dogs, one must yield or perish. But unlike those examples, Neanderthals and modern humans were close enough to breed, close enough to love, close enough to hate. The war reached its climax 45,000 years ago. Climate catastrophe, Heinrich Event 4, plunged Europe into brutal cold. Resources became scarce, territories shrank, the comfortable buffer zones between species disappeared. It was time for final solutions. And that's when modern humans deployed their secret weapon. Not better spears, not stronger muscles. Something far more devastating, the ability to lie. Language, abstract thinking, and social cooperation gave us something Neanderthals possibly lacked. The ability to form massive alliances based on shared myths. We could convince strangers we'd never met to fight alongside us. We could plan ambushes, we could betray. The 100,000-year war was ending, but nobody truly won. Because in victory, we absorbed our enemies into ourselves. Their genes, their technologies, perhaps even their dreams. We became the sole survivors of humanity's longest war. But we also became something else. The first humans to commit genocide against our own kind. And that darkness, it never really left us. She was 17, maybe 18. A Neanderthal woman with russet hair and pale eyes that had never seen African sun. He was older, one of the dark-skinned strangers who'd arrived with the spring migration. By all the laws of nature and culture, they should have been enemies. Instead, on a Romanian riverbank 40,000 years ago, they became lovers. We know this because their great-great-grandson left us his DNA. The young man scientists call OACE. One carried something unprecedented, 6 to 9% Neanderthal DNA, with segments so long and unbroken that his Neanderthal ancestor could only have been 4 to 6 generations back. A great-great-grandmother or grandfather. This wasn't distant prehistoric mingling. This was a family photo album written in genetic code. When we first saw the data, we couldn't believe it, admits Dr. David Reich from Harvard. This wasn't occasional interbreeding. This was sustained relationships, love affairs, marriages, if you will. December 2024 brought even more shocking revelations. 2 landmark studies in Science and Nature proved that Neanderthals and modern humans didn't just have occasional flings. They maintained intimate relationships for 7,000 continuous years. That's 350 generations of love across the species divide. But these weren't fairy tales. The genetic evidence tells darker stories too. Consider this. We find Neanderthal DNA in our cell nuclei, but not in our mitochondria. The DNA passed only through mothers. The pattern is stark and disturbing. It suggests most successful hybrid children came from Neanderthal males and modern human females. The reverse pairing. Those children rarely survived to reproduce. Dr. Fernando Mendez discovered why. Neanderthal Y chromosomes carried mutations that triggered immune responses in modern human mothers. Miscarriages, infant mortality. The price of love across species boundaries was often death, yet they kept trying. At Denisova Cave in Siberia, archaeologists found evidence of a teenage girl who was herself a hybrid. Her mother was Neanderthal, her father Denisovan, another archaic human. 3 human species mingling in one cave, creating children who embodied the complexity of Ice Age relationships. The archaeological record hints at these prehistoric love stories. Shared hearths where both tool technologies appear. Neanderthal sites with modern human ornaments. Modern human burials with Neanderthal-style grave goods, like finding a Yankees cap in a Red Sox locker room, evidence of intimacy that transcended tribal boundaries. But perhaps the most poignant evidence comes from Israel's Kafsa cave. A modern human child buried 100,000 years ago, laid to rest with deer antlers, a Neanderthal burial tradition. Someone who knew both customs, who moved between both worlds, who loved a child enough to honor both heritages. These relationships face challenges we can barely imagine. Communication barriers. Did they share enough language to whisper endearments? Cultural conflicts. What happened when hunting strategies clashed? Social rejection. How did their respective tribes react? The male hybrids often faced the cruelest fate. Many were likely sterile, genetic dead ends in societies where reproduction meant survival. Imagine being the only one of your kind, forever childless, belonging fully to neither world. Yet love persisted. For 7,000 years, despite the wars, despite the biological barriers, despite the approaching extinction, two types of humans found each other in the darkness. Every person of non-African descent carries the proof in their cells, an average of 2% Neanderthal DNA, but some populations carry up to 4%. These percentages represent real people, real relationships, real heartbreak. A Neanderthal mother watching her hybrid child struggle to breathe. A modern human father teaching his thick-browed son to throw a spear. Lovers separated by migration. Reunions that never came. In the end, Neanderthal genes survived only through these forbidden loves. Their species died, but their legacy lived on in the children of their enemies. It's history's greatest irony. The only victors in humanity's longest war were the lovers. They were genetic impossibilities, biological paradoxes, children born from unions that nature should have prevented. Yet here they were, hybrid humans, carrying bloodlines from two species, walking proof that the boundaries between Neanderthal and Homo sapiens were more fluid than anyone imagined. Meet the ghosts who haunt our DNA. The first shock came from a French cave. Scientists analyzing a child's remains from Lagardère found something that shouldn't exist, a skeleton showing both Neanderthal and modern human features. Dated to 24,500 years ago, thousands of years after Neanderthals supposedly went extinct. This 4-year-old boy wasn't just a hybrid, he was proof that interbreeding continued long after we thought it ended. We call them the invisible people, explains Dr. Carles Lalueza-Fox from Barcelona's Institute of Evolutionary Biology. They don't fit our neat categories. Too Neanderthal to be modern human, too modern to be Neanderthal. They lived between worlds. But living between worlds meant facing challenges we're only beginning to understand. Hybrid males often suffered from reduced fertility, the same problem we see in mules, ligers, and other cross-species offspring. The Y chromosome incompatibilities that plagued their parents hit them hardest. Many couldn't have children at all. Imagine their social position. In societies where your value came from contributing to the next generation, sterile males were genetic dead ends. Did they become shamans, leveraging their otherness? Warriors, channeling frustration into violence? Or outcasts, forever wandering between tribes that never fully accepted them? The females fared better, genetically speaking. They could reproduce, passing on their mixed heritage, but even they faced unique challenges. Modern pregnancy lasts 40 weeks. Neanderthal pregnancies may have been longer, their babies' larger heads requiring more development time. Hybrid mothers carrying hybrid babies faced complications that killed many in childbirth. Yet, some thrived. The spectacular case of OAS1, with his 9% Neanderthal DNA, proves that some hybrids were healthy enough to attract mates and produce offspring. His existence required not just one successful hybrid ancestor, but several generations of them. 2024's genetic revelations exposed an even stranger truth. Neanderthals themselves carried modern human DNA, inherited from encounters 200,000 years ago. This means some Neanderthals were already hybrids when they met later waves of modern humans. The children of these unions weren't half and half. They were complex genetic mosaics, carrying ancestry from multiple human species. Physical evidence of these hybrid populations emerges from unexpected places. The Cima de los Huesos site in Spain yielded 430,000-year-old remains with a bewildering mix of features. Too old to be hybrids by conventional timeline, they suggest interbreeding between human species goes back further than we ever imagined. But here's the heartbreaking truth. Most hybrid lineages died out. Oase once spectacular genetic legacy. It vanished. His descendants didn't contribute to modern populations. The Lagar Velho child's lineage, gone. Time after time, we find evidence of hybrid individuals whose family trees simply end. Why, beyond fertility issues, hybrids faced what geneticists call outbreeding depression. Their mixed genes sometimes combined in harmful ways. Immune systems that attacked their own cells, metabolisms that couldn't process local foods, brain development that fell between two functional patterns, creating cognitive challenges. Some researchers suggest a darker possibility: systematic infanticide. If hybrid babies were seen as omens or abominations, they might have been killed at birth. The archaeological record's silence about hybrid children, we find so few, might speak volumes. Yet against all odds, some hybrid lineages survived. Every non-African human alive today descends from successful hybrids. We are all children who shouldn't exist, products of forbidden love between species, carrying genes that cross boundaries science said were uncrossable. The children caught between worlds paid the price for our existence. Their struggles, their shortened lives, their genetic deaths paved the way for modern humanity. We exist because they existed first, and failed and tried again, generation after generation, until finally, miraculously, some succeeded. We are all the children who shouldn't exist, and every time we look in the mirror, we see their legacy looking back. The weapon that would decide humanity's future wasn't nuclear. It wasn't even metal. It was a piece of wood sharpened to a point, balanced for throwing. And 50,000 years ago, it gave our ancestors the edge that would doom an entire species. Picture two workshops side by side. In one, a Neanderthal craftsman chips away at stone, creating tools his ancestors perfected 300,000 years ago. Each strike is precise, practiced, perfect. In the other workshop, a modern human experiments with something new, a throwing stick that multiplies the force of a spear. One represents perfection, the other, innovation. Guess which one survived? Neanderthals were the ultimate conservatives, explains Dr. April Nowell from the University of Victoria. They found something that worked and stuck with it for hundreds of thousands of years. Modern humans? We couldn't stop tinkering if our lives depended on it. Turns out, they did. The technological arms race between our species reads like prehistoric science fiction. Neanderthals dominated close combat weapons, thrusting spears that required incredible strength and courage to use. You had to get within arm's reach of a mammoth or cave bear. Their skeletons bear witness: crushed ribs, pierced shoulders, trauma patterns identical to modern rodeo riders. Modern humans played a different game. Projectile weapons, throwing spears, and later, spear throwers called atlatls let us kill from 30 yards away. When Neanderthals charged in for close combat, we picked them off from a distance. It was Bronze Age tactics versus Stone Age courage. But here's where it gets interesting. Neanderthals weren't stupid. They saw our innovations and tried to copy them. At sites across Europe, we find Neanderthal attempts at projectile points, bone tools, even jewelry, all appearing suddenly after modern human contact. They were learning from their enemies. The most spectacular example comes from France's Grotte du Renne. Here, Neanderthals created sophisticated ornaments, pierced teeth, ivory rings, bone tools, using techniques clearly borrowed from modern humans. But look closer, and you see the tragedy. The tools are slightly wrong, the techniques not quite mastered, like someone trying to copy an iPhone with stone tools. Meanwhile, we were stealing their secrets too. Neanderthal adhesive technology, mixing pine resin with beeswax and ochre to create prehistoric superglue, suddenly appears in modern human toolkits. Their cold weather clothing designs, perfected over millennia, became ours overnight. The real technological revolution wasn't in the tools themselves, but in how fast we could spread innovations. A Neanderthal innovation might take 50,000 years to travel from Spain to Croatia. Modern humans? We had trade networks spanning continents. A new weapon design could spread from Africa to Siberia in a single generation. Dr. Stephen Churchill's experiments revealed the devastating effectiveness gap. A Neanderthal thrusting spear delivered massive trauma but required close contact. A modern human throwing spear caused less damage but could be used repeatedly from safe distances. In a one-on-one fight, a Neanderthal would win. In a battle, modern humans dominated. The endgame came with the invention of the spear thrower around 30,000 years ago. This simple device, a stick with a hook that cradled a spear, tripled throwing distance and force. Suddenly, we could kill mammoths from 100 yards. Neanderthals, still bound to their traditional weapons, became sitting ducks. Yet the saddest archaeological discoveries are the hybrid tools, weapons that blend both technologies, probably made by mixed communities trying to combine the best of both worlds. They represent the last, desperate attempts at technological fusion before one side vanished forever. In the end, it wasn't superior intelligence that won the technology war. It was our inability to leave well enough alone, our restless innovation, our constant tinkering, our refusal to stick with what worked. The very traits that make modern humans so frustrating, never satisfied, always changing things, saved our species. Neanderthals built tools to last forever. We built tools to replace tomorrow. Guess which philosophy survived? The last Neanderthals on Earth huddled in caves overlooking the Mediterranean, watching the sun set on their species. Gibraltar, that rocky fortress between Europe and Africa, became their final refuge and their tomb. What happened in those last desperate years would haunt our species forever. 28,000 years ago, Gorham's Cave was paradise turned prison. Sheltered from Ice Age winds, blessed with seafood and game, it should have been perfect. Instead, it became the stage for humanity's first extinction event, and we have front row seats to the tragedy. When you walk through Gorham's Cave, you're walking through a crime scene, says Dr. Clive Finlayson, who spent decades excavating the site. Every layer tells a story of desperation, dietary changes, population stress, the slow strangling of an entire species. The evidence is heartbreaking. In earlier layers, we find remains of large game, ibex, deer, boar, Neanderthal life as it had been for millennia. But climbing toward those final layers, the bones change. Rabbits, birds, tortoises, shellfish. Finally, in desperation, they were eating marine mammals, seals and dolphins. something Neanderthals had never done before. They were starving in paradise. Meanwhile, just across the strait in Africa, modern humans thrived. The same resources that couldn't sustain the last Neanderthals supported massive modern human populations. Why? We had trade networks bringing resources from inland. We had boats for deep-sea fishing. We had the ability to exploit resources Neanderthals couldn't reach. But Gibraltar's Neanderthals didn't go quietly. They innovated with desperate creativity. Hash marks on cave walls, possibly numerical notation, abstract patterns that might be art. Eagle talon jewelry more sophisticated than anything their ancestors made. Facing extinction, they experienced a cultural renaissance. The most haunting discovery came from Devil's Tower rock shelter. A Neanderthal child's skull, around 4 years old, dated to 28,000 years ago. One of the last Neanderthal children ever born. Whoever buried this child with red ochre and perforated shells knew they were witnessing an ending. Did they understand their entire species was dying? Climate data reveals the final blow. A series of severe cold snaps between 30,000 and 28,000 years ago turned Gibraltar from refuge to trap. The forests retreated, game migrated south. For a population already stressed, already inbred from isolation, it was too much. Genetic evidence from these final Neanderthals tells a story of tragic isolation. Populations that once ranged across continents had shrunk to tiny bands of closely related individuals. Inbreeding depression, reduced fertility, increased birth defects, accelerated their decline. They weren't just running out of food, they were running out of genetic diversity. The last Neanderthals faced a perfect storm, explains Dr. Katerina Harvati from the University of Tübingen. Climate change, resource competition, demographic collapse, and yes, pressure from modern humans. Any one factor they might have survived. Together, impossible. Yet even in those final years, there's evidence of contact with modern humans. Tools that blend both traditions, ornaments that echo modern human styles. Were these last Neanderthals trading with their replacements, learning from them? Or were modern humans already moving in, intimate witnesses to extinction? The very last layer containing Neanderthal remains dates to 28,000 years ago. Then, nothing. After surviving 400,000 years of ice ages, volcanic winters, and climate chaos, they vanished. Not with a bang, but with a whimper. No great final battle. No dramatic last stand. Just silence. But here's the kicker. We almost joined them. Genetic studies show modern humans also experienced a population bottleneck around this time, dropping to perhaps 10,000 individuals worldwide. We came terrifyingly close to following our cousins into oblivion. What saved us? The very traits that doomed them. Where Neanderthals were specialists, we were generalists. Where they were conservative, we were innovative. Where they were territorial, we were networked. The differences were tiny. The consequences, absolute. Standing in Gorham's cave today, you can almost hear the echoes. The last conversations in a dying language. The last flint napped in ancient tradition. The last Neanderthal parent holding the last Neanderthal child, watching the last sunset their species would ever see. We won by the narrowest of margins, and in winning, we lost something precious. The only other humans who truly understood what it meant to be human. Their ghosts haunt Gibraltar still, reminding us that extinction is always just one perfect storm away. In a German valley 400,000 years ago, something extraordinary happened. An elderly Neanderthal, his spine twisted with arthritis, his teeth worn to nubs, took a fatal fall. By all rights, his story should have ended there. Instead, His companions carried his broken body to a deep pit, arranged him carefully, and created humanity's first known funeral. This is the Neanderthal story their bones tell, not of brutes, but of beings who cared for their elderly, healed their sick, and mourned their dead. And the more we uncover, the more we realize we've been telling their story wrong. Every skeleton has a biography, says Dr. Penny Spickins from the University of York. And Neanderthal biographies consistently show something remarkable, compassion that matches or exceeds our own. Take Shanidar one, nicknamed Nandi. This Neanderthal male survived to 45 despite disabilities that should have killed him in infancy. A blow to his head in youth left him partially blind and brain damaged. His right arm withered from paralysis. His right leg was deformed. He was deaf. In a brutal Ice Age world, he should have died decades earlier. He didn't. His people fed him, protected him, found roles he could fulfill despite his limitations. For 30 years after his injuries, his community said through actions what they couldn't say in words. You matter. You belong. We won't leave you behind. Or consider La Chapelle aux Saints, the infamous Old Man of La Chapelle. When discovered in 1908, his bent spine and worn teeth were used to portray all Neanderthals as primitive or hunched brutes. Modern analysis reveals the truth. He lived with severe arthritis for years, unable to hunt, barely able to walk. Yet he was carefully buried with tools and food for the afterlife. Even death couldn't break the bonds of care. The evidence multiplies. At Dederia Cave in Syria, a 2-year-old with severe brain abnormalities was buried with a limestone slab carefully placed over his head. Protection for a journey his people believed he was taking. At Roc de Marsalle, a 3-year-old was interred in a natural depression, deliberately excavated deeper to create a proper grave. But it's not just death that reveals their humanity. It's how they handled life. Broken bones that healed straight indicate medical knowledge. Someone set those fractures. Teeth worn from use as tools show elderly Neanderthals contributing even when they couldn't hunt. Survival rates from severe injuries that would kill without care prove they had healthcare systems we're only beginning to understand. We find healed femur fractures that required 6 weeks of complete immobility, notes Dr. Spikins. Someone had to bring food, water, protection, and yes, deal with bathroom needs. That's not just medical care, that's love. The skeletal evidence of care extends beyond their own species. At Shanidar Cave, modern human remains appear in layers above Neanderthal ones, using identical burial practices. Did they learn from watching Neanderthal funerals? Did mixed communities develop shared rituals for death? Even more intriguing, the flower burial controversy. Shanidar 4 was found surrounded by pollen from medicinal plants, yarrow, cornflowers, St. Barnaby's thistle. While some argue the pollen came from burrowing animals, others see evidence of humanity's first funeral flowers. Plants chosen not for food, but for meaning. The violence between our species is written in bones too. Trauma patterns, weapon injuries, evidence of raids. But alongside the violence, we find something else. Neanderthal technologies in modern human graves. Modern human ornaments with Neanderthal bodies. Even in death, the boundaries blurred. Perhaps most revealing is what's missing from their bones. Evidence of wealth, inequality. No Neanderthal skeletons show the dramatic differences in nutrition and health we see in early agricultural societies. In death, as in life, they were more egalitarian than we ever became. Dr. João Zilão from the University of Barcelona puts it bluntly. The bones don't lie. Neanderthals had medicine, they had art, they had compassion. They had everything we consider prerequisites for humanity. The only thing they lacked was survival. Their bones tell a story of a species that succeeded by every measure except continuation. They mastered their environment, cared for their vulnerable, created meaning from existence. They were human in every way that matters. Except one. They trusted too much, competed too little, and shared too readily. In a world where modern humans arrived with superior weapons and inferior morals, Neanderthal compassion became a liability. Their bones tell us who they were, but more importantly, they tell us who we weren't and what we lost when we won. December 12th, 2024. Scientists drop a genetic bombshell that shatters everything we thought we knew about human origins. Neanderthals didn't just give us DNA, we gave them ours. For 7,000 years, our species didn't just coexist. We formed families, communities, and bloodlines so intertwined that untangling them required supercomputers and breakthrough algorithms. We had to recalibrate our entire understanding, admits Dr. Priya Morjani from UC Berkeley, whose team made the discovery. This wasn't occasional interbreeding. This was sustained gene flow over 350 generations. These species knew each other intimately. The revolution began with a mystery. Why did all non-African humans have roughly the same amount of Neanderthal DNA, about 2%? If interbreeding was random, we'd expect wild variation, some populations with 10%, others with none. Instead, suspicious uniformity. Enter the breakthrough. IBD Mix, an algorithm that can detect ancient DNA segments even after 50,000 years of recombination. What it revealed rewrote prehistory. That 2% wasn't from random matings but from a specific period, 50,500 to 43,500 years ago, when our species mingled continuously. But here's where it gets weird. The gene flow went both ways. Neanderthal genomes from after 200,000 years ago contained 2.5 to 3.7% modern human DNA. Our ancestors had been intimate with Neanderthals for longer than Homo sapiens has existed as a pure species. The implications stagger the mind. Every history book is wrong. Every museum display oversimplified. We didn't replace Neanderthals. We absorbed them. They didn't go extinct. They merged with us. Dr. Joshua Akey from Princeton puts it provocatively. Neanderthals are not extinct. Their lineage continues in us. We are the hybrid species that survived. The genetic revelations keep coming. That Neanderthal DNA isn't randomly distributed through our genomes. It clusters in specific regions, especially genes controlling immune function. 40% of our immunity genes have Neanderthal variants. Skin and hair. Up to 70% of East Asian skin genes come from Neanderthals. Metabolism, particularly fat processing in cold climates. Brain development, though notably absent from speech areas. But evolution also actively removed Neanderthal DNA from critical regions. The X chromosome is nearly Neanderthal-free. Genes controlling sperm production show strong selection against Neanderthal variants. Our genomes bear scars from ancient genetic warfare. Some hybrid combinations were so harmful that natural selection erased them. The most shocking discovery. We're still finding new archaic humans in our DNA. Ghost populations, species we've never found fossils for, left genetic signatures in modern humans. We weren't just mixing with Neanderthals, but with a whole community of human species. It's like finding out your family tree includes not just the relatives you knew about, but entire branches you never suspected existed, explains Dr. Sriram Sankararaman from UCLA. The medical implications transform modern healthcare. That Neanderthal DNA affects everything from COVID susceptibility to depression risk. The gene variant that made some people desperately ill with COVID, inherited from Neanderthals. the genes that help Tibetans live at high altitudes. Also Neanderthal gifts. But technology keeps pushing boundaries. New techniques can extract DNA from cave sediments. No fossils required. Others can determine what archaic genes actually do in living cells. We're not just reading the book of ancient humanity, we're starting to understand the language. The November 2024 discovery of Thorin, a Neanderthal showing 50,000 years of genetic isolation, adds another twist. Some Neanderthal populations avoided mixing entirely, maintaining genetic purity while their cousins mingled with modern humans. Why did some groups interbreed while others remained separate? We don't know. Even more mind-bending, we're finding Neanderthal DNA in African populations previously thought to have none. Through ancient back migrations, even populations that never left Africa carry traces of our extinct cousins. There's literally no pure Homo sapiens left on Earth. The final irony? Neanderthal genes that once helped them survive now help us. Their cold-adapted metabolism genes protect against frostbite. Their immune variants fight off pathogens. Their brain genes might even enhance certain types of thinking. We spent decades portraying Neanderthals as evolutionary losers. The DNA says otherwise. They're not gone. They're us. Every time we survive a cold winter, fight off an infection, or process fatty foods, we're using their genetic gifts. The DNA revolution isn't over. Each month brings new discoveries, new ghost populations, new understanding of how intertwined human species really were. We're not discovering our past, we're discovering ourselves. And the biggest discovery of all? There's no such thing as pure human. Never was. Never will be. We are, and always have been, a mixed species. The Neanderthals didn't lose. They became us. Look in the mirror. See that nose? Could be Neanderthal. That tendency to gain weight easily? Neanderthal. Your ability to handle cold weather? Straight from your Ice Age ancestors. Even your risk for depression, your sleep patterns, your immune responses, all shaped by genes from a species we supposedly replaced. But here's the plot twist that changes everything. We didn't replace them. We are them. Every non-African person watching this is part Neanderthal, states Dr. Svante Pääbo, who won the Nobel Prize for sequencing the Neanderthal genome. Not metaphorically, not poetically, literally. You carry their genes, their mutations, their evolutionary adaptations. You are living proof that Neanderthals never went extinct. The numbers tell an incredible story. If you have European ancestry, you're about 2% Neanderthal. East Asian, up to 2.8%. Indigenous American, similar levels inherited from Asian ancestors. Even populations we thought were Neanderthal-free, sub-Saharan Africans, carry about 0.3% through ancient back migrations. But percentages don't capture the reality. That 2% isn't evenly distributed. In some gene regions, you might be 70% Neanderthal. In others, 0. Evolution kept the beneficial genes and discarded the harmful ones. We're not random hybrids. We're carefully curated genetic libraries preserving the best of both species. Take a moment to appreciate what this means. Your great-great-grandmother, multiplied by about 2,000 generations, might have been full Neanderthal. When you catch a cold, Neanderthal genes help fight it off. When you metabolize fat, Neanderthal enzymes do the work. When your skin adapts to sunlight, Neanderthal mutations guide the process. We are walking, talking monuments to prehistoric love. But it goes deeper than biology. New research suggests Neanderthal genes might influence personality traits. The gene variants associated with being a morning person, more common in people with higher Neanderthal ancestry, tendency toward introversion, might be your inner Neanderthal, Even certain types of intelligence could be influenced by archaic genes. We used to think of evolution as replacement, explains Dr. Tony Capra from UCSF. Now we know it's more like remixing. We're the greatest hits album of human evolution. The medical implications transform how we think about health. That back pain plaguing millions. Partly because we're walking around in bodies mixed from two species with different spinal architectures. Autoimmune diseases, sometimes caused by Neanderthal immune genes overreacting to modern threats. Mental health issues may reflect the challenges of running a Homo sapiens brain with Neanderthal neurochemistry. But Neanderthal genes also gave us superpowers. High-altitude adaptation in Tibetans comes from archaic human genes, resistance to certain viruses, ability to process specific nutrients. Even some aspects of language processing might be enhanced by Neanderthal variants. The philosophical implications shake our very identity. We spent centuries defining ourselves in opposition to primitive humans. Turns out we are those primitive humans. Every racist ideology based on genetic purity becomes laughable when you realize we're all mutts at the species level. Dr. John Hawkes from the University of Wisconsin puts it perfectly. There's no pure human population, no master race, no genetic chosen people. We're all hybrids. We're all immigrants from somewhere else. We're all carrying genes from species we used to think were inferior. Looking forward, the Neanderthal within us isn't done surprising us. As we face new diseases, climate change, and unknown challenges, genes that lay dormant for millennia might suddenly become crucial. The COVID pandemic showed this. A Neanderthal gene variant determined who lived and who died. We're entering an era where we can activate or deactivate archaic genes, potentially awakening dormant Neanderthal traits. Imagine choosing to express Neanderthal muscle-building genes for athletics, or their cold resistance for Arctic exploration. We might become more Neanderthal by choice. But perhaps the most profound realization is this. Every human achievement includes Neanderthal contributions. The art, the music, the technology, the civilizations we built, all created by hybrid minds combining the best of both lineages. Michelangelo painting the Sistine Chapel, part Neanderthal. Einstein developing relativity, part Neanderthal. You, watching this, part Neanderthal. We tell stories of conquest, but the truth is absorption. We tell stories of superiority, but the truth is synthesis. We tell stories of us versus them, but the truth is we are them. The Neanderthals won by losing. They achieved immortality through integration. Every human birth is their victory. Every human achievement, their legacy. So the next time someone calls you a Neanderthal, say thank you. It's not an insult, it's a fact. We are all Neanderthals now. And that's the most human thing about us.